So today Buddhist ethics lesson I will be continuing from this topic of bioethics, euthanasia and suicide. However, before begin our class proper, I would like to introduce this group today who are present in our class. They are from Korea, the Seoul Buddhist Graduate School, and here is Professor Jung Yang Jong, and and also we have another professor from famous Buddhist university, Dongguk University, and then all the others are the senior students of this university, and they are visiting Myanmar. And then Professor Jung Yang Jong studied with me in Sri Lanka, so because of our connection, he wanted to visit me and then this institute. And when I said that I am teaching, they were very happy to come and sit in my class. So the Venerable Dr. Veluriñana was very kind to give us permission. And also I would thank you because we are also taking some time and space from your class. So with these preliminary words, I will go into my lecture. But before that, I would like to ask Professor Jung Yang Jong to just to greet the people. You can translate that too.
예, 여러분 지금부터 생명률이 그리고 안락사와 자살에 대한 강의를 시작하겠습니다. 오늘 기쁜 일이 있는데요. 한국에서 서울 불교대학에 많은 학생들과 전주분이 좀 연명하는 한국대학에 전준혁 교수님이 오셔서 매우 기쁩니다. 제가 전준혁 교수와는 2년을 만나서 저가 스리랑카에 있을 때 저희 제자였습니다. 저희 연마에 보내면서 저한테 연락을 했는데 제가 여기서 가르치게 됐더니 너무나 좋게 학생들과 가르치셔서 강의를 좀 나눠서 듣고 싶습니다. 그래서 이렇게 왔는데요. 그래서 제가 학장님과 다 학교 관계자를 알아봤습니다. 여러분들 이렇게 훈련한 대로도 자리를 내주고 전에 학생들에게 또 감사를 드립니다. 먼저 전준혁 교수님께서 말을 좀 듣겠습니다.
My name is Jung Yang Jong. I am from Korea. With my students, I'm working in the Seoul University of Buddhism. Actually, I studied the teaching of him. I studied under the teaching of him. I'm a pupil of him, Professor Asaka Terakawa. I finished my PhD at the University of Canada. And now I'm teaching in Seoul University of Buddhism. Nice to see you, members.
전준혁 교수님의 그 백그라운드를 다 준비하시는 내용이기 때문에 켈라니아 대학에서 아산다 피아카티 교수님을 회의시키도록 하겠습니다.
Okay, up to this point, we have been discussing different aspects of Buddhist ethics. Today I thought we will move into this important subject of bioethics. Actually, bioethics is a very interesting new area when we are discussing Buddhist ethics, because for a long time there was not much discussion based on Buddhism on bioethics. But in fact, when we study Buddhist philosophy carefully, we can see that there is so much relevant things, so much relevant to bioethics in Buddhism. So therefore, some of these issues are very new, but of course, the Buddhism can say quite a lot. Now, speaking on my own personal experience, I remember I wrote an paper on euthanasia in 1975. When I was young, like some of you, but by that time there was absolutely nothing written on euthanasia and Buddhism. But I wrote something in Sinhala language, but then now when I see there are so many writings from the Buddhist perspective on bioethical things. So in this presentation today, first I would like to introduce you to the subject of bioethics, and then we will move into some issues on bioethics.
저기 생명윤리라는 것이 현대사회에서는 굉장히 좀 새로운 주제인데요. 불교에서 보면은 그렇게 새로운 것이 아니고 많이 다른 적이 있습니다. 근데 저의 개인적인 경험으로는 1975년 제가 이렇게 공부했을 때 제가 안락사에 관한 논문을 한편 쓴 적이 있습니다. 그때는 싱글라우로 정보를 찾고 있었는데 굉장히 정보가 부족했어요. 근데 최근에 한번 찾아보니까 그와 반대로 아주 풍부합니다.
Okay, bioethics is the study of ethical issues emerging from the advances in biology and medicine. It is also deals with the issues related to medical policy and practices. Biotechnological issues such as cloning, gene therapy, human genetic engineering are some other important issues dealt with in this field. Among the host of bioethical issues, euthanasia, suicide, abortion are among the very important issues often discussed and debated. The basic principles that guide the field are the respect for the autonomy of the person, beneficence and justice. Such qualities as non-maleficence, human dignity and sanctity of life too are considered fundamental. The personal autonomy is considered the main principle. Actually, when you take bioethics, bioethics basically means the ethical issues arising from the development, advances of biology. So that's why they are called bioethics, and also medicine. Now today, unlike say 100 years ago, the medical science is very developed. Now as a result of development in the medical science, there are new situations. For example, in those days, if somebody is dead, that person is dead, okay? But today, virtually you can keep someone's body breathing with the help of machine. So if the body can breathe, if it functions, then is that person dead? No. Or it is a very difficult situation, whether the person is dead or not. Now, you remember, long time ago, if you look at it, this kind of problem doesn't arise because there were no what is called artificial respiratory machines. So you can't put anybody in artificial respiratory machine. So if you can't breathe, that means you are dead. But today, with the help of a machine, we can make a body breathing. We can make it breathe any length of time. So, these are new problems. Now, for example, when somebody is brain dead, actually brain is dead, but of course the other things are functioning. Now, if other things are functioning, whether the human being is dead or alive is again a problem. So, actually these bioethics come from the issues of developments in biology and medicine, and also it deals with the policy matters and practices. Now, for example, unlike ancient days, today we have a hospital system. Then the government spends money for that. Now it is an important question to think on what kind of disease would the government spend money? For what kind of people government would spend money? Because government money is limited. Everybody cannot go to private hospital. So in the government hospitals, how would they allocate money? How would they allocate resources? Now all these are new problems coming from development in biology and the medicine. So all these problems are really debated. Now some of these problems are debated at the level of UN, United Nations. So then there are world conventions, agreements to decide how to do and what to do, okay? So now among the bioethical issues, I identify here three main things. Of course, that doesn't mean only those three main things, but three main areas are euthanasia, which is called mercy killing, and also suicide, and also abortion. These are some of the important and interesting bioethical issues. Now, basic principles that guide the field are respect for autonomy of the person. Actually, what is this autonomy of the person? It means that ultimately each individual has a freedom or liberty to determine when you want to die. I mean, that is the autonomy of. Now, this idea basically comes from very much from the Western tradition, because individual is so important. So, individual has freedom. Individual can decide when you want to die. For example, now if you are very, very sick, if you can't eat, all days you die. But today, you can insert a tube from your nose or from your throat and insert food into your body. You are never going to die. Your body can exist because your food is, just pipe through into your body. But some people say, if I get sick, don't put tubes. Now that is your freedom. Some people say that. If I get sick, don't put food through tube. Now that is the decision that person takes. Now he is making a decision on his life. He doesn't want people to make decisions and put food through the tube and make him lie on the bed. He says, no, don't do that. Now that is the concept of autonomy, because you have freedom to decide whether you want to die or what time you want to die, how you want to die. So these are an autonomy, beneficence and justice. Of course, these are some of the principles that govern the field. So this just a basic introduction of bioethics. Yeah.
네, 생명윤리학이라는 것은 이슈가 되는 이유가 생물학과 의학이 굉장히 발달해서 거기에서 또한 그 의료 정책 이것들과 관련된 그 이슈들 때문에 나오는 건데요. 몇 년 전까지는 그런 일이 좀 없었습니다. 죽으면 그냥 죽은 거였어요. 그렇지만 지금은 이 기계로 생명을 연장할 수 있기 때문에 인공호흡 장치라든지 아니면은 더 이상 먹을 수 없는 사람에게 음식을 보호한다든지 이런 것 때문에 생물이 대두되는 문제입니다. 그래서 새롭게 들리는 문제인데요. 한 사람이 예상했다. 그러면 이 사람은 죽었지만 몸의 다른 부분이 기능한다면 이 사람은 과연 죽은 것인가? 이런 것과 관련이 있는 거고요. 생물학, 의학, 그리고 정부 정책과도 매우 관련이 있습니다. 정부는 어떤 질병에 투자를 해서 그 치료법을 개발할 것인가? 정부 병원에 어떤 방식으로 예산을 투자하는가? 뭐가 다 영향을 미치는데요. 최근에는 이것이 UN 차원에서도 토론을 해서 세계적인 문제로 대두가 되었습니다. 어쨌든 이 분야에서 되게 새로운 생명윤리학의 사람 중에 한 세계 분야는 제 생각에 안락사, 자살, 안태입니다. 그리고 기본적인 원리는 개인의 자율성인데 서양적 개념입니다. 나의 자유, 개인의 자유, 개인의 자유. 내가 언제 죽고 싶고 어떤 방법으로 죽고 싶고 어디에서 죽고 싶은지 나는 결정할 자유와 권리가 있다. 그런 개념이죠. 그래서 개인 자율성.
Although in the traditional Buddhist societies, modern ethical discussions on these issues are relatively new, matters related to these issues have been discussed both in the Dhamma and the Vinaya. It is only recently, for the past 4 decades, 40 years, that contemporary scholars on Buddhist ethics have paid attention to the Buddhist standpoint of these issues. Okay, now actually, if you look at the traditional Buddhist societies, usually traditional Buddhist societies are Asian Buddhist societies. Among us, there was not much of discussions on these issues. However, important thing is, if you read the Dhamma, if you read the Vinaya, you see quite many discussions relevant to these issues. Now, for example, we will see when we talk about the abortion. I am not actually discussing abortion here, but things related to abortion. For example, in the Vinaya, clearly there is matter discussed in the Vinaya concerning the Buddhist monastic Vinaya. Now, killing a human being is a very grave offense for the monks, right? Now, even abortion is killing a human being. Now, today in the modern times, abortion is considered to be a killing a human being. But in the Buddhist text, you find this long time ago. For more than 2,500 years ago, Buddhists considered that abortion is a killing. So if a Upasampada monk commits abortion, he loses the Upasampada. Now, which means that in the Buddhist tradition, in the Buddhist literature, in the Buddhist Vinaya, in the Buddhist Dhamma discourses, there are material that are relevant to bioethics. Okay? Only thing is we need to study them from that point of view. Okay? So actually what I am going to today with you is an effort to look at some of these problems from Buddhist point of view. Okay? We will get into euthanasia. Euthanasia derives from eu, thanatos in Greek words. Eu means happy, comfortable, pleasurable. Thanatos means death. So actually euthanasia means basically the happy death. Okay? Now it basically refers to killing a person as a means of releasing him from a painful, incurable disease. Naturally it is open for many legal and ethical disputes. So basically euthanasia, sometimes they use the word mercy killing. Okay, that is the more popular word, is the mercy killing. Now mercy killing or euthanasia means, it comes from a Greek word, thanatos means death. So happy death. Actually, although it refers to happy death, it is not really happy death. It is giving a happy death. In other words, you kill a person, okay? You kill the person, but in order to give him a happy death. That is the idea, okay? So this is basically the thing.
그래서 사실 그 담마의 이율 여기 관계된 내용이 생존윤리에 관한 내용이 오래전부터 있었습니다. 2,500년 정도 있었다고 볼 수 있었는데요. 제가 나태입니다. 아직 아니죠? sorry. 지난 40년간 그 현대의 사회에서는 대두됐지만 아시아에서는 아주 오래전에 이런 생존윤리가 대두되었습니다. 경전에 나와 있는데요. 나태에 관한 윤리 2,500년 전에 이미 성립되어 있습니다. 그러니까 왜냐하면 그 태아도 인간이고 인간을 살해하는 것은 존재이기 때문에 나태도 살인이다라는 것이 이미 나와 있었고요. 또한 안락사와의 관계 곳을 보면은 그 안락사 그 주인이 그 유라는 것은 유더네지아라는 영화를 보면은 언어를 보면 유는 행복한 것이고 또 타나토스는 죽음입니다. 여기서 그리스에서 나왔는데 행복한 죽음, 불교에서는 자비사, 자비로운 살인 이렇게도 부릅니다.
Now, defining what euthanasia is an important thing to begin with. I refer to here a few definitions. Oxford English Dictionary defines it as the painless killing of a patient from an incurable and painful disease or in an incurable coma. So this is the Oxford English Dictionary. The British House of Lords Select Committee on Medical Ethics, they define it as a deliberate intervention undertaken with express intention of ending life to relieve incurable suffering, generally described as the painless inducement of quick death. Now, if you look at carefully, you can see that when you look at the definitions, now definitions, it is very clear, couple of things. One thing is a definition, very clear, it is somebody kills somebody, okay? Killing is there. It is not a natural death. A doctor or somebody brings an end to life, which means killing, right? So that is one thing. And the other thing is, the very important thing is, this has to happen when the patient is undergoing very bad pain. That bad pain is not something temporary, that long lasting bad pain in an incurable. Now, sometimes doctors consider certain patients to be incurable, cannot be cured. So in other words, in a situation when a patient is undergoing so much pain and there is no end to it until the person dies, then only this is justified. So it is really a form of killing in order to very clearly to end somebody's suffering, okay. So those things are that. If you look at the definitions, you can see that that is how it is. There are 3 types of euthanasia. Now I will come to these things later, but basically voluntary, ending of life with the consent of the patient. Now voluntary means the patient says to the doctor, "Doctor, finish my life." Okay? Then doctor will either give an injection or something and kill you. So that is called voluntary euthanasia, because it is your consent is there. You say to the doctor, you say to doctor or any medical person or whoever, just to finish, finish your life. And then the second is non-voluntary, ending of the life of someone who is unable to give consent, too young, too old, in a coma. Now there can be certain situations the patient is not able to give the consent. For example, if you take a very small child who is completely maybe born without a heart, maybe something like that, but the child is not able to give the consent, then of course parent or somebody will have to give the consent. Then that is what is called non-voluntary, okay, non-voluntary. And sometimes person is too old, can't give the consent, then daughter or son says, "No, go ahead and do that," something like that. So, or in a coma, you know what coma means, usually it's an unconscious situation where your body is kept on the bed. You remember I told you about in 1975, around that time I wrote an article on this. Actually, my reason for writing the article was this happened in 1975 in California. This girl, her name was Karen Ann Quinlan. This girl was riding in a motorcycle, pillion rider, back seat, and then met with accident, and she was jumped over the motorcycle, and her brain sustained severe injury. So in other words, she was brain dead. But nothing has happened to the body. You don't see anything. So she was kept in the California hospital for a long time. The body is there, body is breathing, but nothing, no functioning. That finally, her parents wanted to, because body can be maintained with the machinery. Then her parents wanted to terminate it. And then, but parents can't do that. Doctor says no. Because so long as somebody is living, according to Hippocrates' oath taken by the Western doctors, you have to provide medicine. You can't terminate medicine because the person is technically living, breathing. Okay? Then finally, her parents had to go to courts. So they went to California courts, and California courts gave the permission, okay, pull the plug, terminate it. And the most interesting thing is actually when they pulled the plug, this body did not die immediately. It lasted, according to my memory, another 2.5 months or something, still on the bed. Yeah, it was really, really very interesting thing. And I remember I was my early 20s by that time, but I was reading Reader's Digest magazine. Reader's Digest magazine carried the full-length article on this. So when I read this article, I thought there is a way to explain this according to Buddhism. So with my knowledge during that time, of course, I hope I have a little better knowledge now. But I wrote an article on this because it's so interesting, because it's so challenging. Because when to decide, when to determine somebody is dead. Ancient days we didn't have this problem, but today simply because of the technological development. So the non-voluntary is that. Then third one is the distinction involuntary. Involuntary means without the consent of the patient, against his or her will. Now this is something very important, because sometimes euthanasia has been practiced without getting the permission of the patient. Now of course this is not really euthanasia, because one very bad example is in Nazi Germany between 40 and 1945. They killed so many thousands of people and children, saying that either they are deformed, or they are with some kind of incurable disease, or they are too old, like that, giving many reasons. Nazi Germany killed so many thousands of people. So this is a very notorious case in the world history. So now that is considered to be involuntary. Involuntary means without taking the permission. Of course, that person can give the permission, but without permission, you give some medicine, drug or something and you kill the person. So these are the three. The first is legal in some countries. Now if you look at voluntary euthanasia is legal in some countries. I think some Scandinavian countries and Belgium, according to my memory, Netherlands. So if you want to die, you can go to one of these countries, and some states of United States. This voluntary euthanasia is the legal, because unless it is made legal, you can't even, because the important thing is here, even if I say, okay, kill me, but you as the doctor, if you kill me, then you are guilty. So, there is no second opinion about it. So, doctors don't do that. But there are some countries where it is legal. So, according to the country law. So, if you go to that country, that's what it is. The first is legal in some countries, last two are illegal. In particular, the last is considered to be the murder. That means involuntary, you kill somebody. But that is not euthanasia really, because euthanasia has to be to end the pain. But in Nazi Germany, they killed so many people not to end the pain, but simply because they were too old, they were useless. Or simply some children were like what's called Mongols, so they had some brain problems, and then they just killed them. Because Nazi Germany wanted to create a perfect like society. In English we call it eugenics, I think we call it eugenics. This idea is that you want to so eugenics means you want to create a society with perfect physical, mental, these things. So for that they killed. Okay.
네, 먼저 그 옥스퍼드 영어사전하고 영국 사원특별위원회 의료윤리특별위원회의 전문의까지 나와 있는데요. 그거 보시면 되니까 제가 생각을 하겠습니다. 그리고 이제 그 안락사라는 것에 대해서 세 가지 종류가 있다고 하셨는데요. 그 첫 번째가 바로 어쨌든 굉장히 장기적인 고통을 없애기 위해서 죽지 않으면 없어지지 않는 고통이기 때문에 의사에게 요청합니다. 나를 죽여주십시오. 그러면 의사가 독약을 주사해서 이 사람을 이제 평화롭게 죽게 해주는데 이 경우 이것이 그 합법적인 나라가 일부 지역에 있습니다. 예를 들면 벨기에, 스칸디나비아 나라, 그 미국주가 이런 것들이 있고요. 여기는 자발적 동의를 하는 것입니다. 두 번째는 비자발적 동의, 이건 불법입니다. 예를 들면 어린이가 자발적 동의할 수 없죠. 무료의 동의할 수 없습니다. 호주 상태의 시부인가 할 수 없습니다. 이런 경우 제3자 또는 관계자, 친척 이런 사람들이 해달라고 요청을 하는 것이죠. 이것을 촉발한 유명한 사건이 있었는데 1970년 캘리포니아에서 오토바이 사고가 나가지고 한 사람의 뇌가 이제 죽게 되었습니다. 그런데 부모가 생명부지 장치를 오래 해놨다가 안 되겠다, 이거 좀 중단해달라 그랬는데 의사들이 호흡을 하고 있는데 중단 못한다. 그래서 결국 재판까지 가고 굉장히 유명한 사건이고 아사가 교수님께서 이걸 리글 다이제스트라는 연구 진술일보 편의에서 의료적 이름을 내기 위해서 기고를 하신 적이 있다고 합니다. 세 번째, 불수의적 안락사라는 게 있는데요. 환자의 의지에 반해서 환자의 동의를 받지 않고 하는 사례로 가장 대표적인 것이 난지 독일이 대의를 사례한 것입니다. 난지는 굉장히 완전한 사회, 정신적, 육체적으로 완전한 사회, 우수 유전자 사회를 만들기 위해서 이 사람은 몸이 기억이다, 이 사람은 좀 유전자가 안 좋다, 이 사람은 너무 어렵다, 이런 것들을 당신한테로 엄청난 유대인을 주었는데 이것은 바로 바로 불법인데다가 살인, 인종 살인이라고 할 수 있죠.
Okay, any type of the euthanasia mentioned above, depending on the way it is practiced, it is either active or passive. Active euthanasia is to cause the death by using some lethal substance. Passive is sometimes called pulling the plug, is cause death by withholding treatment. In either case, the intention to terminate life, to kill, is essential. The action is done with that purpose in mind. Now actually we outlined there are 3 types of euthanasia. It can be voluntary euthanasia, non-voluntary euthanasia and involuntary euthanasia. Now this any type of euthanasia can be active euthanasia or passive euthanasia. Now active euthanasia means you do something in order to kill the person. Passive euthanasia is you don't do something positive, but for example, if you are giving medicine, you stop giving medicine. Now that is passive. Or if you, as I said earlier, feeding somebody through the pipe, you remove the pipe. Okay, things like that. So that's passive euthanasia. You remember my earlier case, Karen Ann Quinlan's case. Now her parents got the permission from the courts to pull the plug. But funny thing is, even though they pulled the plug, she didn't die. She didn't die for 2 months or something. That means, body got used to artificial respiratory machine and then it started breathing without the machine actually for some time. But that is the kind of negative, I mean the passive euthanasia. Passive euthanasia means you don't do anything positively, you just stop some of these things. It is kind of very interesting when we look at the religious traditions, particularly Jaina religious traditions that we were talking in the morning. This passive kind of euthanasia, there are examples. I will come to them a little later. And then the active euthanasia is usually, suppose voluntary euthanasia, somebody says to the doctor, okay, doctor, please kill me. Now, if the doctor gives an injection to kill, that means that is active euthanasia because you did something, you gave some medicine to terminate that person's life, or you apply some morphine or whatever like that in a big dose, or give some tablet or any other manner. Now that is called active euthanasia. Now any of these 3 types of euthanasia can be either active euthanasia or passive euthanasia. In either case, the intention to terminate life. Now, this is something very important because intention, in Pali we say chetana. We know that in order for something to be kamma, there must be a chetana. Chetana ahang bhikkave kammang vadami, right? So the chetana is the most important thing. Now this chetana aspect, this intention aspect is important not only in Buddhism, in law also this is most important, because in law it is very important in what intention did you do that. So in Buddhism as well as in law, this intention aspect is a very important thing, because somebody can say pull the plug simply because the patient asks you to pull the plug. You don't have the intention to kill, you just pull the plug. Suppose you are the son, father is the patient, father says do it. As the obedient son you have to do it. But you don't want to kill your father, so you didn't have intention to kill him. Or simply patient says, please don't give me food anymore. So you stop giving food, but not to kill that person, simply because that person asks you to stop giving food. So there can be that type of situations where intention to kill is not there. But either it is active or it is passive, you have to have the intention in your mind, okay, that you are doing this in order to kill. Actually this language kill is not very good, because killing is not a good thing. But here what is happening is, actually you are terminating life. So the bad word for is killing. But it is not like, you stabbing somebody or you shoot somebody, it is not like that. You simply, we can say, cause death. Okay, you induce death or something like that. But anyhow, now we move into the third paragraph here, there is a very slim difference between what is called assisted suicide and the voluntary euthanasia. In the former, that means assisted suicide, X helps Y to kill himself by providing means to kill, such as lethal drugs, weapons, advice on the exact dose of the medicine, and etc. Accordingly, Y kills himself. However, in the latter means voluntary euthanasia, X actually does something to Y with Y's consent to cause his death. Now, this concept, assisted suicide, this is another very interesting concept. Assisted suicide. Now, suicide means you are killing yourself. Now, the distinction between euthanasia and suicide is very clear. In euthanasia, somebody is killing somebody. In suicide, you are killing yourself. Okay, that's the basic difference. However, assisted suicide means sometimes we are in a situation we can't even kill ourselves. We need some help from others. Okay. Now, assisted suicide means you help someone to commit suicide. For example, you provide the gun so that he can shoot himself. Or you give a lethal medicine. Okay, you take this medicine. And then, things like that. So, you assist somebody to die. So, that is assisted suicide. But if you take voluntary euthanasia, what I am trying to tell you is this. The difference is very, very marginal. Now, here I take this lethal medicine and I give, okay, you drink it. And if you can't pour it, I put it into a cup or spoon and give you the spoon. And then you committed suicide. But I assisted to you till the last moment. But the euthanasia is, I just opened your mouth and put that into your mouth. So this is the difference, it's a very slim difference between the two, but there is a difference. Because I make this distinction because this distinction is important for my next part of my discussion, okay? Yeah.
자, 삶을 존중한다, 죽인다는 말이 별로 안 좋아서요. 생명을 존중한다라는 말을 쓸 텐데 여기서 가장 중요한 건 의도입니다. 부처님께서 비구들이여 나는 의도가 법이라고 말한다고 하셨던 것처럼 이 의도가 중요한데요. 이 죽이려는 의도, 이것은 불교에서도 중요하지만 일반법에서도 굉장히 중요합니다. 그래서 죽이려는 의도 없이 우리가 플러그를 뺄 수도 있어요. 의도는 지금 보시면 여기 안락사에 세 가지가 있었죠. 자발적 안락사, 비자발적 안락사, 불수의적 안락사. 이 세 가지 모두에 액티브한 경우와 패시브가 능동적인 경우와 수동적인 경우가 있습니다. 능동적인 경우는 내가 어떤 행위를 하는 겁니다. 실제로 어떤 행위를 해서 그 주어를 하는 것이고요. 이 수동적인 경우는 이를테면 그 사람의 인공호흡 장치를 그 플러그를 빼서 중단시킨다든지 아니면은 또 영양, 튜브로 우리 혈관 영양을 이렇게 봤는데 음식을 더 이상 공급하지 않는다. 어쨌든 스탑한다는 것이 수동적인 것이고요. 능동적인 것은 내가 어떤 행위를 해서 죽음을 도는 것입니다. 근데 어떤 이 세 가지가 다 그게 가능한데요. 결국은 죽이려는 의도가 가장 중요합니다. 그런데 미세한 차이가 별로 없다. 있어도 아주 미세하다는 것이 있는데 바로 assisted suicide를 해갖고 자살을 하도록 도와주는 법에서는 자살 방조라고 하는데요. 또는 이 자발적 안락사 사이에는 별 차이가 없습니다. 안락사는 다른 자기를 죽이는 거고 자살은 자기를 죽이는 것인데 이 자살 방조의 경우에는 안락사는 의사가 수분에다가 약을 넣어서 내 입에 넣어줍니다. 이거 먹고 죽어. 그런데 이 자살 방조의 경우는 수분에다 약을 넣어서 이거 먹으면 죽을 거야. 그 사람을 줍니다. 정말 자기가 먹는 거예요. 이런 차이가 있다고 정도밖에 볼 수가 없습니다.
Okay. The concept of mercy killing, which I referred to earlier, is basically applicable to voluntary euthanasia. It is believed that out of compassion, in order to relieve that person of pain, one kills another. So this euthanasia is actually the technical word, but in the society usually this is known as mercy killing. So you kill somebody out of mercy. you kill somebody out of compassion. Okay. Now this is the basic idea. Now voluntary euthanasia basically, if somebody says, please kill me, I have so much pain, then if you kill that person, that is considered to be mercy killing. You kill somebody out of compassion. Now okay, this is the technical aspect of the euthanasia we are discussing today. I am just trying to explain to you what the concept means. Next we will look at how can we look at this according to Buddhism. What does the Buddhism has to say about this? But before going into that aspect, let me again tell you that this idea, this whole concept of life and death and whole idea of your determining your death is something I would say in a way new way of thinking. Because in the ancient society, in traditional societies, usually people didn't have to do that. I mean, at least there was no discussion about it like today. Today there is a lot of discussion. However, even in the ancient societies, there were some practices. There were some practices related to this. For example, very often, elderly people in many societies, in ancient societies, when they knew that they are too old, when they knew that they can't help the household life by cooking or by doing some work, when they felt that they are just eating. In the ancient societies, both Asian and other societies, they had this idea. Some people just would not take any more medicine after that. They say, don't spend money for medicine for me. Which means actually in a way you are committing suicide, but not in a rash way, not in like you kill yourself by a knife or something, but in a very peaceful manner. You say, don't give me medicine. Then naturally you die after your first illness, or you stop eating. Some people stop eating, some very elderly people stop eating. I don't, but then within few days you are gone. So this concept was there even in the ancient Asian societies. I remember long time ago seeing this Japanese movie called Narayama, a very interesting movie about story about ancient village. If you look at that movie, that's an interesting movie, I think old movie, so it must be freely available now. There's a very interesting episode there. Now in that Narayama, Nara village, they have a custom when people get very old, they gather all the old people in the village and give them a meal, and then that day evening they ask their son to bring them into a very top mountain. In that mountain, of course, it snows always. So they say that if you are very lucky, that night it will snow. That means you are a very old person, you put that in the mountain, shivering, and you die. Otherwise what happens is vultures are waiting for you to eat. So but this story, when I saw this movie, actually I was thinking, it's very interesting because in this society where how the elderly people take their life, because when they realize that they are no longer useful to the society, they just voluntarily go to the mountain. That means they are left there and they die. So this practice in many different ways in our ancient societies. I'm sure Korean society might have similar stories, and many societies you have that, because when people feel that their life is no longer useful. Now in Buddhist tradition, particularly in the Tibetan tradition, I'm sure you must have heard that we have this idea, a Buddhist monk would enter into a enclosure. Actually it's completely closed, only there is an opening with a rotating window. So you can keep food on the rotating window like this. You rotate the window, food goes inside, and then take the food, then again rotate, the vessels come out like that. However, if that food is not taken for 2-3 days, which means that the person is dead, because he will never come out from that cell alive. It's the last journey. He goes there, and then he never takes medicine, nothing. So you decide on your life whether you want to live or die. So therefore this aspect is, this whole thing is not something new. Only new thing is, in our societies we don't have much discussion about it. But today in medical ethics, there is so much theoretical discussion about it. But in the ancient days, people did not discuss these things very much. But they were there in the society, they were understood by the people. Even today, I have seen some cases, like recently I saw in somewhere, this man in his late 70s or something gets very sick, and then doctors say he has to do a surgery which cost about the couple of million, the Sri Lankan rupees in the Sri Lankan standards, couple of $100,000 perhaps. You know what this man said? No, don't spend that money for me. Let that money be used my children. I don't want. So he did not go for the surgery. And what is this? He just did not want that money to be going for the surgery for his life. He said, I have lived enough. I have lived a good life. I don't want any longer. So, these are instances of people making very difficult choices. It's not an easy choice, because all of us like to prolong our life even for a minute, okay, even for a day. But there are some people who make very difficult decision. So therefore, this is an important thing in all over the world. People making choices about their life, whether to live, whether to die. How should you do that? Okay, so this is basically the idea. So euthanasia in that sense is an important subject. Okay, we will look at what is the Buddhist standpoint on euthanasia. The two main instructions relevant to this issue come in the 5 precepts. The first precept applicable to all Buddhists, and the third defeat parajika offense for the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. According to both precepts, killing is not allowed. Now, I said earlier, when we define euthanasia, euthanasia means basically to kill a person, okay? But the issue is, when we say mercy killing, you kill the person because the person asks you to kill him. Or you kill the person because you have a mercy, you have compassion in your mind, okay? Now, either way, if you look at the first precept, panatipata veramani sikkhapadam sabadhyami, for the lay people, and not only lay people, actually panatipata sikkhapada is for everybody. Upasaka, upasika, bhikkhu, bhikkhuni, all 4 people. Now, according to panatipata veramani, you can't kill anybody. I mean, simply you cannot kill anybody, okay? Now, if you are discussing, okay, what is the Buddhist point of view of euthanasia, we can very simply say that, no, you can't do it, because simply, according to the first precept, you can't kill anybody. Now, that is one thing. Now, the other instance is, you look at the monastic vinaya, parajika. The third parajika is called manussa viggaha parajika. Now, manussa viggaha parajika means, again, you cannot kill a human being, okay? Now, of course, killing an animal comes in a somewhat little bit lesser category of offense, but the third parajika says that you can't kill. So in that sense, we can simply say that according to Buddhism, euthanasia is out. But that is too simple position. So we will go a little further. But anyhow, basically, fundamentally, we can say that no, any kind of killing according to Buddhism is prohibited, right? So it does not allow from the first precept for any Buddhist, or it does not allow for particularly the Upasampada monks to kill a human being according to the third parajika. Since euthanasia clearly involves intention to kill, and doing or not doing something, active or passive, for that purpose, according to the Buddhist criteria, it is killing and it is not allowed. Now, how are you going to determine whether euthanasia is right or wrong? Now, one way to determine that would be to say that, look at the intention. Now, you can't have euthanasia without the intention of killing, okay? Now, if you don't have the intention to kill, if you pull the plug, you are not committing murder really. But so intention is a very important thing. Even in panatipata veramani, intention has to be there. Pano bhave, panasanyi, vadaka chittan. So you have to have vadaka chitta. You have to have the intention to kill, okay? So that's very important. And so the intention to kill, and doing or not doing something. Now here we say Active euthanasia, you do something. You give a medicine, you give an injection, or whatever. And not doing something. Passive means you do something that you don't do that something that has to be done. Now, for example, to a person you have to give food, but you stop giving food. And then artificial respiratory machine, you stop the machine, things like that. So, not doing is negative upakkama, not absence of upakkama. Now, you might think that not doing is not doing something. No, actually, we have 5 things, right? Pano bhave, panasanyi, vadagachittang, upakkamo. You have to do something, but either doing what should be done, either not doing what should be done. So, in either way, you have upakkama there, you do something. So, not doing is also a kind of doing, okay? It doesn't mean that you are just simply inactive, no. You passively do something. You give usually food, you stop giving that, not doing it. So, something like that. So, the upakkama, which is one of the 5 requirements of killing, okay. From this up to this point, up to this far, the discussion is that what is the Buddhist position of euthanasia? We can simply say that no, euthanasia is not allowed in Buddhism because killing is not allowed in Buddhism. So simple as that. Killing is not allowed in the Panchasila, killing is not allowed in the monastic community in the Parajika. And also, why euthanasia is killing? Because you have to have the intention of killing. Without intention of killing, it doesn't become euthanasia. Okay? All right.
네, 안락사, 자비로 타인을 죽이는 자비사인데요. 내가 내 죽음을 결정한다는 것은 새로운 개념이지만 고대에서는 여기에 대한 논의는 퍼져있지만 있습니다. 얘가 이렇게 고대 사회에 그 고려는 집안일을 못하죠. 그런 음식이나 약을 먹지 않아서 스스로 죽음을 편안하게 죽어가는 경우도 있었습니다. 제가 그 흥미로 기본 일본 영화라는 거에서 고려사를 비슷한 걸 봤습니다. 이제 마을에 굉장히 고령의 노인들, 그래서 사회에 도움이 안 되는 노인들이 있을 때는 한 내다 모아놓고 아주 좋은 식사를 대접하고 그분들을 사람들이 다 옮깁니다. 그러면 아주 이분들이 운이 좋다면 그날 밤에 눈이 많이 와서 얼어 죽을 빨리 얼어 죽을 수가 있었겠죠. 어쨌든 사회에 유용하지 않아서 이렇게 그 죽음을 선택하는 일은 죽음을 당하는 사람도 다 이해하고 동의하고 그런 제도가 계속 존재해 있었습니다. 하는 그런 일이 있을 거라고 저는 생각합니다. 근데 그 현대에서는 의료인에 대해서 굉장히 많은 논의를 하고 있는데요. 스리랑카에서도 뭐 그런 얘기가 있습니다. 수십만 달러에 달하는 수술을 위해 내가 산다. 그러면 내가 심각하게 생각하죠. 애들을 위해서 차라리 이 돈을 쓰지 뭐라로 내가 조금의 생명을 연장하기 위해서 이 돈을 쓸 것인가. 굉장히 어려운 선택을 해야만 하는데요. 그렇다면 불교적 관점에서 안락사를 한번 볼까요? 불교적 관점에서 결론적으로 말씀드리면 안락사는 수동적 안락사든 능동적 안락사든 다 잘못입니다. 왜냐하면 결국은 킬링하니까요. 그런데 개인적으로 보면 제가 받는 일개의 전제 불살생이고요. 승가에서 받는 그 바라자문자 중에 그 세 번째 바라유죄에 해당하는 것이 불살생입니다. 첫 번째 살생도 잘못인데 결국은 그 태도 의도가 중요하다. 아까 얘기했죠. 자가 행동적으로 무엇인가 하는 거, 숨을 이유가 무엇인가 하지 않는 거, 하지 않는 것도 내가 무엇인가를 결국은 하는 겁니다. 그 선택을 한 것이죠. 그래서 수동적이든 능동적이든 불교에서는 안락사는 모두 다 잘못이다라고 말할 수 있습니다.
Okay, if we take some instance, if X kills Y on Y's request and with his consent, is X guilty of killing? Now, in other words, voluntary euthanasia. Now, if you take this case, now Y want X to kill him, okay? So, it is Y's consent, with the consent of Y, at the Y's request, X is killing Y. Now the question is whether X is guilty of killing. Now if you look at from the third Parajika offense provides an answer to this question. In that Migalandika kills those monks with their consent and on their request. But the Buddha says it is murder. Now this third Parajika rule is something very interesting. I hope everybody knows third Parajika, why it came. Briefly, one time Buddha gave a sermon on the filthiness of human body, okay, how filthy human body is, asubha. And then, having listened to this, so many monks got so disgusted about their body. And after giving this Dhamma sermon, Buddha retired into the forest for some time. And when the Buddha came back, Buddha saw that the group was less. Buddha asked what happened. To see that, what happened was, in the absence of the Buddha, because these monks were so pissed off about their physical body, they committed suicide. Some other people got this person called Migalandika. Now Migalandika is described as Samana Kutta. Samana Kutta means he's a sham, he's a bogus monk, he's not a proper monk, okay. Now they got this bogus monk to kill him. So actually the interesting thing is, now if you look at Migalandika's case, Migalandika killed these monks with their consent. They asked him to kill them. Okay? So Migalandika is not doing something he simply wanted. Of course, as a reward, he got all the whatever that belongs to those monks, so that was the motivation for him. But basically Migalandika killed those monks due to their request. You can't say that Migalandika had the compassion or something, but Migalandika is not really the instigator, Although he killed at their request. But when this was reported to the Buddha said Migalandika is a murderer. Now this is something very interesting. Even if you kill somebody with that person's consent, now we can also add to this, even if you kill that person in order to shorten his sansara or shorten his suffering, but that is wrong according to Buddhism. Okay, even though you kill the person. So that's a very clear instance. And then the third Parajika says, whatever monk should intentionally deprive a human being of life, okay, and should look about so as to be his knife bearer. Remember, that part is also very important for our discussion. So there you are not killing somebody, but you are trying to get a knife bearer, some kind of weapon. It can be a knife. There were no guns those days. Today you can say it is a gun, whatever. Or should praise the beauty of death, or should incite somebody to death. Now those are also very important. Now praising the death, inciting somebody to die. Now these are not really killing. But Buddha says, if you praise death with the intention of killing that person, if you incite that person to die. Actually this happened because the Chabbagya monks had a very nasty thing, because they saw this very beautiful lady and this man is sick, so they wanted to get the man out of the picture, and they went to the man and said, it is much better for you to die rather than living. So this man thought that it is true, and then he gradually stopped eating and he died. But these monks did that out of filthy intention, because they were interested not in the man but in the woman, But then, they persuaded, they incited this man to kill himself. But he didn't kill himself rashly. He just stopped eating, did not take medicine, so gradually he died. But then Buddha found that those monks are also guilty of Parajika. Now here the interesting thing is this. So if you not only kill somebody, if you praise death to somebody with the intention of killing that person, and if that person dies as a result, then you are guilty of Parajika. So not only you physically kill a person, you praise death or you incite a person death, okay? But of course this doesn't mean that you praise death and if the person doesn't die, you are not Parajika. But simply because you praise the death so that the person is gradually determined, he loses the will to live, he or she will give up the life, and so finally ending in death. So according to this rule, so to the question, if X kills Y on Y's request with his consent, in other words, voluntary euthanasia. Now we have three types of euthanasia here, voluntary, non-voluntary and involuntary. We can very clearly say that voluntary euthanasia is wrong, okay? Because even though it is with that person's consent, you can't kill the person. The moment you kill a person, you become guilty of parajika.
만약에 X가 Y의 요청을 받고 Y의 동의를 얻어서 Y를 죽인다면 X는 그 살해죄가 있을 것인가? 이것이 자발적 아사사인가? 이런 질문이 첫 번째 나왔고요. 저기 서면 화면에 보시면 제3발화죄는 바로 여기 질문에 대한 답을 제공한다고 되어 있습니다. 부처님께서 전에 그 인간 몸에 굉장히 혐오스러우면 부정관을 말씀하셨을 때 많은 스님들이 비구들이 거기에 대해서 너무나 그 혐오스러워서 자살을 택한 사람들도 있었고 또 여기 미갈란디카라는 스님에게 나아가 그 자살을 할 수 있게 도와달라라고 부탁을 한 적이 있습니다. 그래서 미갈란디카가 그 요청을 들어줬는데 부처님께서는 이거에 대해서 아니다. 미갈란디카 이것은 살인이다 라고 말씀을 하셨습니다. 그래서 화면이 사라져버렸어요. 어쨌든 그래서 제3발화죄를 다시 잘 보시면 이렇게 설명을 하고 있습니다. 스님이 무엇인가를 의도적으로 인간에게 살림을 이렇게 빼앗아갈 때 그는 해야 할 것인가? 어떤 스님이 그에게 자기를 살해할 수 있는 칼을 주변을 둘러면서 구해준다든지 또는 죽음을 참여한다든지 그러면 누구와 다르게든지 죽음이 차라리 낫다라고 죽음을 선동한다든지 그 역시 그 발화의죄를 범하는 것이기 때문에 순간에 더 이상 남아있을 수가 없고 그는 순간을 나가야 한다. 6월 3장 73조입니다.
Okay, actually this is the same thing I already described to you. According to the story behind the third parajika, having listened to a sermon of the Buddha on the loathsomeness of human body, some monks killed themselves, while some others sought Migalandika's help. Except killing actively, there are three other conditions to the rule. Provide the weapon, praise the death, incite someone to death. All the three intention of causing death. One is guilty of murder in all three instances. So if you do engage in any of these things with the intention of killing somebody, according to this rule, you are parajika. All these instances come under the assisted suicide. If the person commits suicide, not under euthanasia, which requires a negative or positive action which results in death. Now interesting thing is, if you look at the parajika rule, except the first one, where Migalandika really kills them, all the other three situations are what is called assisted suicide. Right? In a way, you persuade something. And then so all these instances come under assisted suicide if the person commits suicide, not under euthanasia which requires a negative or positive. Now in other words, what I am trying to tell you is this assisted suicide is also murder according to Buddhism. If you assist somebody to kill himself, so not only euthanasia you really kill the person, but in assisted euthanasia you are not killing, but you are helping a person to kill. But you help a person to kill, only thing I am not sure is, Venerable Velu, if the person doesn't die, then in the assisted euthanasia, I think you are not parajika, right? Yeah, because even though you praise death with the intention of prompting that person to die, if he doesn't die, you are not parajika, simply. Yeah. Okay, so you are not really parajika if the person doesn't die, but if the person dies, then of course it becomes parajika. Okay, this is just some observation about the basic thing. Just be brief.
네, 지금 여기도 지금 첫 번째 사항은 조금 아까 말씀드린 그 사항이 그 법원대로 반복되고 있고요. 위반 완납가가 그 자살을 도와준 거. 그런데 두 번째 사례 보시면은 그 인공적 그 사례에 대하여 세 가지 조건이 있습니다. 이 법칙에는 첫째, 자기를 자살하도록 무기를 준다거나, 둘째, 죽음을 찬탄하고 찬미한다, 셋째, 누군가에게 죽음을 계속 조장하고 선동한다거나. 이 모든 것이 그 죽음을 가져오려는 의도를 가지고 있을 때 그는 다 살생죄가 성립된다고 할 수 있습니다. 그리고 이 모든 세 가지 경우가 다 그 자살을 조선사살 원조 홍보 안에 들어간다고 할 수 있죠. 그래서 능동적으로 안락사를 하든 수동적으로 안락사를 하든 이것은 다 그 죽음을 가져오게 되고 이것은 불법에서는 물류에서는 제 잘못인데요. 어떤 사람에게 죽음을 참여하고 선동했는데 그 사람이 죽지 않았다면 이 승려는 마라이죄가 성립되지 않습니다. 그렇지만 그로 인해 그 사람이 죽었다면 결국 그는 마라이죄가 성립됩니다.
Now, important question is mercy killing possible or permissible according to Buddhism? Or simply you can ask a question, can you kill someone out of compassion? Can you kill somebody out of compassion? Can you kill somebody out of kindness? Now this is interesting question. Number one, since any type of killing is not permissible according to Buddhism, mercy killing is wrong. We can say that simply mercy killing is wrong, not because any other thing, simply out of mercy or out of compassion or out of anything, you cannot kill anybody. Okay, so we can say mercy killing is out of the question. You can't kill anybody. Then number two, since according to the Buddhist analysis of mind, compassion and act of killing cannot coexist, mercy killing is impossible. Now the thing is, on the another hand, according to Abhidhamma, you can argue that mercy killing is impossible. Because you can't have, in other words, on the one hand, kindness, compassion and anger together. So according to the Buddhist analysis of mind, we can say that mercy killing cannot happen. I mean, then why do we call it mercy killing? Maybe for some reason we can look at it. I mean, there are arguments and counter arguments, but in a way we can argue according to Buddhism, you can't have these two things together. However, we can look at the counter argument for this. Number one, the counter argument for number one is, when X is suffering from an incurable disease, motivated by the compassionate thought of ending X's pain, cannot I kill him, although anger is there in the act? Cannot such act can be considered as motivated by compassion? Now you know, the interesting thing is counter argument. You can say that you see somebody, maybe your mother, maybe your father, suffering so much, so you want to terminate that suffering. Basically, as the son or as the daughter, as the near relation, you feel very bad about it. So you want to really make this person's life happy. Okay. Now also you can say that if this person dies in this mental situation, his mental situation is not good at all. According to Buddhist analysis of mind, he will be born in the bad place, right? Because he is suffering means he is angry. Because suffering means a type of anger. So if you die in that situation, you can be born in the apaya. Now as son or daughter, or as a person who loves this person very much, husband or wife, you don't want your spouse to be born in the hell. So rather, you will make that person very calm and quiet last moment. You give a happy death. So on the one hand, we can say according to Abhidhamma, you can't, mercy killing is impossible because there are two completely opposite thoughts. One thought is mercy, other thought is anger. Counter argument is, you can say that it is true, but you have the compassion as the long time thing. But you know, when you give an injection or something, you know that you are killing him. But although you know that you are killing him, your overall idea is you want to relieve this person of pain. So you can also argue to the other side, right? Which side are you on? Are we to say that simply nobody can, mercy killing is completely impossible because you can't have mercy and killing going together. But on the other hand, we can argue that in the long term, I just want to, end your suffering, end my mother's suffering, father's suffering. So I do something and give a medicine, give an injection and kill the person because I love that person so much. So can't you argue that out of compassion you can really kill somebody? Because although in this act, say for example, now you love your mother so much, you want to kill that person. It's a matter of giving the injection, just about 1/10 of minute, right? It doesn't take that long. You can do it in a very smooth manner. You are not killing, you are not shooting, okay? You do a very, very subtle, very simple thing, like give injection, but the person dies. So you do that out of compassion. So can't we say that out of compassion you can kill somebody? So both ways you can argue. Strictly according to Abhidhamma, no. But on the other hand, there can be a situation where you can induce, kill a person like that. So let me go into still another argument and then now this one. When one's very near relative like mother or father is suffering from incurable disease with much pain, it is natural that son or daughter may feel unbearable to see them suffering and feel that they should end their pain and decide to terminate the patient's life. Is it at least not a better solution? Now, you ask your son or daughter, you feel that you should end the life because they are so much suffering. So don't you think it is a better thing rather than letting this person dying? So there are different situations. I think I just made the question very clear. So you can have simply two arguments. One thing is whether you can kill a person out of compassion. Strictly according to Abhidhamma, you can say no. But on the other hand, you can argue that compassion as overall intention is compassion. But you do something, you terminate the life. But you terminate life is so old, so incurable, and all these things. So there are two ways you can just argue.
네. 자, 그러면 자비사라는 것이 과연 가능하고 허용할 수 있는가? 불교에서는 이런 질문이 있습니다. 여기에 대해서 자비로운 마음에서 누군가를 죽일 수 있을까? 여기에서 아비담마에는 이런 답을 합니다. 불교에서는 불교 심리학에서는 자비로운 마음과 살생이라는 것은 공존 불가능하다. 그러므로 자비사라는 것은 말도 안 되고 불가능하다라고 이제 논리를 합니다. 여기에 대해서 반론이 나올 수 있습니다. 그렇다면 만약에 나의 부모가 어머니나 아버지가 너무나 불치병으로 끝없는 고통을 겪고 있다. 이것은 사랑하는 아들이나 딸 또는 배우자 남편이나 아내가 보기에 너무 가혹하고 가슴 아프다. 그래서 어떻게든 자기로 이 고통을 끝내주고 싶다. 또는 너무나 고통을 받고 있기 때문에 이 환자의 의료적 상태가 굉장히 안 좋다. 굉장히 고통에 쌓여있고 분노하고 있다. 이렇게 분노한 상태에서 죽음을 맞이하면 악독이 태어날 수밖에 없다. 그래서 우리는 좋은 곳에서 편안한 죽음을 맞아서 좋은 곳에서 태어나도록 하기 위해서 안락사가 필요하다. 이런 논리를 할 수도 있습니다. 여러분은 어느 편입니까? 내가 엄마에 대한 사랑이 지극해서 전체적으로는 자비심에 하는 의도로 엄마의 고통을 덜어주기 위해서 사실 그 독극물을 주사하는데 뭐 1초면 되겠죠. 아주 중간이면 되는데 그것이 엄청난 고통을 불치병의 끝을 낼 수 있는 최소한의 해법이 아닌가 이런 생각을 할 수 있는 거죠. 이런 논리가 있습니다.
Okay, so I gave you two arguments. We simply say that mercy killing is impossible according to Buddhism. Then of course we can argue according to Abhidhamma. But then even though it is impossible according to Abhidhamma, when someone's very near relative, his mother or father is suffering, you can say that, isn't it better to end the suffering? Although it could amount to a killing, but simply as a loving child or relative, whether you can't do it or not. Then what should be the Buddhist response to these counter-arguments? Now if you look at the counter-arguments, you can see, cannot we make, according to Buddhism, a distinction between long-term goals and immediate actions? Like, there is a distinction between long-term goal and immediate action. Now the good example is removing a fish bone stuck in child's throat. This comes in the discourse called Abheraja Kumara Sutta. Actually, Buddha asked from Abheraja Kumara, his child was in the lap. Buddha asked, what would you do if a fish bone is stuck in your child's throat? What are you going to do? Do you simply say that it is painful to take it out and not take it out? Then he says, no. Even though it is painful, I will take it out because I love my child, he says. Now, if that argument is correct, that means you can give some pain for the long-term goodness, right? Because if you leave the fish bone stuck in the child's throat, child will be suffering long-term. But you cause little bit suffering and take it out, so that you cause long-term happiness to the child. Now can't we use the same argument? Because in the long term, you want to stop your mother or father's suffering. Okay? So you do something and then long term she is fine. And also added to it, then your mother or father will be dying with a good mind and hopefully will be born in a good, better place, not in a bad place. Because if she is in so much pain and kind of aggressive mind, then she will be born in a bad place. So as a good son or daughter, this thing. However, on the other hand, you can say, if one cannot bear another's pain, whose problem is it? Okay, my mother is suffering, I can't bear it. Then the question is it my problem or her problem? If I can't bear the pain, it is my problem, right? Is the killing the answer? Now if you take atta para, you remember we discussed earlier, one's own self and other. Can this be an instance of killing due to self-love? Ultimately, you cannot bear your mother is suffering simply because it is your mother. You don't have that problem with somebody else's mother, right? Ultimately, whom are you loving? You love yourself. You are upset because it is your mother. So actually, in a way you can argue you killed your mother not because you love your mother but because you love you more than that. I mean, that's one way. Cannot this be an instance to Vanchaka Dhamma, self-love in the guise of love for the other? Now I am sure all of you have heard about this concept called Vanchaka Dhamma. What is Vanchaka Dhamma? There can be certain things arising in us in the guise of a good thing. That is Vanchaka Dhamma. You deceive yourself for that. Right? Very often, certain things, bad things arise in our mind, but we give it a good name. It's called Vanchaka Dhamma, deceiving phenomena. You deceive your own mind. You play a trick on your own mind. Now, this can be the same thing somebody can say. Although you feel bad because of your mother, but actually you feel that because it hurts you. You can't look at it. But on the other hand, somebody can say, look, pain is not that bad. If you have pain, ask your mother to meditate on Vedananusati, isn't it? No, I'm serious. In a severe thing, maybe that is difficult. But if you have a pain teaches us many things, isn't it? Vedananupassana, Satipatthana. So when you are painful, you meditate on your pain. So pain is not all that bad, isn't it? The other thing is, I mean, there are so many possibilities. You say sometime this disease is incurable, but you may not know surely. It may be curable. Maybe the person will get cured after some time. So, it is not very easy to decide whether something is curable or not. That is one thing. On the other hand, you can say pain according to Buddhism is not all that bad. Pain gives us lessons. Pain teaches us lessons, isn't it? Attaloka Dhamma, Labha, Alabha, those are both are good. When you say Labha, it is good. Alabha, it gives you some understanding about life. So, you can argue in that manner also. So, the arguments and counter arguments. So, in one sense, you can ask whether mercy killing is good or bad. So, you can see there are various types of argument. Actually, one reason why I brought this issue is with your discussion, you must be able to see when there is this kind of problem from different perspectives, from Abhidharma point of view, from Vinaya point of view. Because Buddhist philosophy is so rich. Buddhist philosophy has so many ways to look at these problems. So, you can argue from Abhidharma point of view. You can say according to Abhidharma this cannot work. Then somebody can say according to Abhiraja Kumara Sutta this can. Something like that. We really need to put these ideas out and see how they are going to function. Okay. So, again, another thing is this. You can't have a hard and fast 2 + 2 is 4 like answer for this kind of questions. Questions are very complex.
자, 첫 번째 분류적 이 반론에 대한 분류적 대응을 보겠습니다. 첫 번째, 우리는 장기적 목표와 즉시적 행동, 공급 조치에 어떤 구분을 할 수가 없을까? 이를테면 부처님께서 어떤 제가자가 아들을 하나 안고 있었는데 아들을 보기에 생선가시가 들어있을 때 너는 생선가시를 빼내는 그 시키고 아무리 아프다 하고 장기적 목표를 위해서 가시를 빼주지 않겠느냐. 당연히 빼주겠습니다. 이런 의도가 있습니다. 이것이 여기 적용할 수 있는 것이고요. 만약에 두 번째 문제입니다. 만약에 타인의 통증을 내가 견딜 수가 없다면 이것은 누구의 문제입니까? 나의 문제, 바로 나의 문제라는 거죠. 타인의 문제가 아니고. 그래서 바로 과연 여기에서 그 살인이 답이 될 수 있을 것인가? 자아냐, 타자냐, 이거의 문제인데요. 이것이 바로 자기 사람으로 인해서 사기를 저지르는 그런 예가 될 수 있지 않을까. 이것이 바로 타인에 대한 사랑으로 가자는 자기 사랑의 그런 예가 될 수 있지 않을까. 이런 논리를 던졌습니다. 그래서 똑같은 논리를 이제 적용하셨는데요. 만약에 나가 자기 마음에 아플 때 우리가 감각을 잘 관찰하면 내 마음을 더 잘 관찰할 수가 있습니다. 근데 우리는 자기 마음에 트릭을 보는 수가 많죠. 자기를 속이고. 그래서 지금 아픈 고통의 대상은 엄마지만 고통을 느끼는 주체는 바로 나입니다. 불치병이 과연 나쁜 것이기만 하나요? 좋을 수도 있습니다. 불교에서 고통은 그리 나쁜 것이 아닙니다. 그래서 이런 문제가 나에게 일어날 때 그거를 다른 관점에서 볼 수 있어야만 합니다. 아브라함의 관점, 훌륭한 물리적 관점에서 우리가 이것을 볼 수 있어야지 우리가 좀 더 좋은 물리적 관점을 해서 시선을 돌릴 수가 있습니다.
Okay, let me come into some kind of conclusion because we are almost coming to end of our time. Anyhow, I will be discussing further this again tomorrow morning with our group, but let me come to some kind of conclusion of our discussion. So the why euthanasia is wrong according to Buddhism. Now this is a kind of, I am summarizing the discussion. For all the reasons due to which killing is wrong. Now if you say killing is wrong, for the same reasons, euthanasia is also simply wrong. One's life is the most dear to all living beings. One should, on the basis of attanang upamang katva, not deprive another of his most desired thing. You know this attanang upamang katva, taking oneself as example. In my earlier discussion, I pointed out to you this attupanayika patipada. You always look at yourself and compare with, if you don't like, then others also don't like it, you know, that argument. So simply we can say, you know, you must not kill. Another argument is it interferes with the functioning of karma. Some say karma should be allowed to run its course. But then what is the limit of interference or non-interference with karma? Should one spend all karma? Is it possible? Should not one take medicine or cure an illness? Is everything due to karma? Now you can see these are very, very big issues. I cannot discuss now. But you know, karma is a very interesting thing, because sometimes people say that you have to let the karma run its course. So suppose this person is supposed to live 80 years. When he is 40, you kill him, euthanasia. But then they argue that no, that is wrong, because karma has to run its course. But personally, I don't accept that argument, because you know, if that argument is true, then you will not be able to even take medicine. Because you know, if there are some diseases, if you don't take medicine, you are going to die. But then simply because you are sick, you have to take medicine. Maybe you became sick because of karma, or maybe not, because everything is not due to karma according to Buddhism. So you know, it is very difficult for us to determine whether something is really due to karma or not. So argument based on karma is, you know, really a problematic thing, but we can discuss this argument further, okay? Now, third thing is, by terminating life, the sick person is deprived of learning from one's pain and suffering, which is to deprive the patient of opportunities for his inner development. This is what I said earlier, because when you have pain, sometimes pain is important for us to understand our own life. If you didn't have any pain, you will never understand the nature of life. But if you have to live with the pain, pain can be a good teacher. You know, when you are in pain, when you are in some kind of disease, you can really learn quite a lot about the life. Now, if you terminate your life, it will not be good. So actually this third argument I like better than the argument based on the karma. But these are some of the reasons we can say why euthanasia is wrong according to Buddhism. Yeah, let me conclude the discussion from here. Actually, I will be discussing further a little bit tomorrow morning with you, and also there is a second section for this lesson today, discussion on suicide. So we will be also discussing that further. But for the time being today, these are some of the arguments you can present. You can say why euthanasia is wrong according to Buddhism.
네, 저희 때문에 시간이 늦어져서 상급하게 좀 일반적으로 갔고요. 교수님께서 이분들에게 사과를 했습니다. 내가 질문을 던지니까. 근데 그러면 불교에서는 왜 안락사가 잘못이냐라는 것이 세 가지 논리가 있습니다. 첫 번째는 사리세는 안 보시기 때문에 그렇다. 그래서 모든 생명은 다 자기 목숨이 가장 귀하다. 그래서 가장 귀한 것을 여기에서 빼앗아서는 안 된다, 이런 논리고요. 두 번째는 까르마의 작용을 우리가 간섭하거나 개입해서는 안 된다는 논리입니다. 그런데 어떤 사람은 이렇게 얘기를 하죠. 까르마가 그 풀코스 끝까지 다 작동하도록 자연적으로 소진해서 없어지도록 우리가 도와야 된다라고 논지를 펴는 사람들이 있습니다. 그러면 여기서 우리가 까르마의 개입을 할 수 있는 한계는 무엇인가? 그러면 만약에 까르마를 다 자연적으로 소진해버리려 한다면 그것이 가능한가? 과연 우리가 질병을 치료하기 위해 약도 먹어서 안 되는가? 그런데 저는 이 논리에는 반대입니다. 아사가 교수님이 반대라는 말씀입니다. 왜냐하면 질병이란 건 까르마를 먹을 수도 있지만 다른 병으로서 올 수도 있는데 그거를 약을 먹지 않고 그대로 중으로 만들거나 뭔가를 건강을 악화시키는 건 별로 바람직한 일이 아니다라고 말씀하셨고요. 물론 이것이 굉장히 큰 이슈고 이렇게 간단한 말로 우리가 논의를 끝낼 수는 없지만 간단히 생각을 말씀하셨고요. 세 번째, 그리고 만약에 삶을 그렇게 인위적으로 종료시키는 때 이 환자는 자기의 고통으로부터 배울 수 있는 기회를 상실하는 것이다. 왜냐하면 고통은 삶에 대해서 우리가 이해를 하고 학습하는 게 가장 중요한 반인데 페인이 아주 좋은 스승이다. 고통은 중요한 스승이다라고 생각하는데 그걸 이미지적으로 적용했을 때 그런 기회를 박탈하는 것이다라는 논리가 있습니다.
Okay. We can maybe spend 5 minutes or something if you have any questions, comments, or other things we discussed.
질문 있으시면
Yes, sir.
학자 선생님께서 질문하십니다.
Well, thank you very much for your lecture. I'm really interested in this word, euthanasia. What I want to know is who started using this word and when it was started using. And as far as my understanding goes, when we look back at the history of the word euthanasia, it's not related either with killing actively or passively. What I understand is this is very simple. Just gather the old people or sick people together and look after so that they can pass their last peacefully and happily. That's it. So it was
Yeah. That's right. Okay, Venerable. Yeah. Thank you so much, Venerable, for that question. Actually, you are right, because in our cultures, we didn't come up with this concept of euthanasia. For answering your first question, who started using it? Actually, I don't remember exactly, but it was like last century, somebody coined this word, combining euthanatos, euthanasia, is some Western scholar. But what the Venerable said is, if you look at this whole thing, when people get sick, when people are disabled, what you should really do, actually the proper thing to do is, you treat the elderly people compassionately and kindly, and then create an environment where they can live happily and die, right? But what happened was in situations like, particularly real moral debate started, Venerable, after the Second World War, because in the Nazi Germany they killed so many. So then in the Nuremberg trials, there was a separate trial for those people, so-called doctors, and the people who did that. So, that was the kind of beginning of the modern discussion on this. And then subsequently what happened was, particularly with this concept of I own my life. Now that is actually an individualistic, I would say very Western concept. Because although we own our life, we never articulate it in that manner. We don't say, I own my life. So to say that I can do anything with my life, of course it is understood, it is your life. But to articulate it in that manner gives a kind of wrong impression. So I have the right to die. Now there is a concept called right to die. Now you have all kinds of rights. Among the rights, you have this concept of right to die. Now that means right to die. So, it is considered to be a right. Now this, whole discussion on rights is very, what is called individualistic philosophical idea. Because you are an individual, you have a right to die the moment you want. But technically it is true, but on the other hand, if I die or if you die, what about your pupils? What about other people? If I die as a father, what about my children? What about my wife? Can I just think that it is my life alone? No, you have to care about the other people also. Because we live in a society where a lot of people depend on. If you are a monastic teacher, if you have 100 pupils, Can you die like that? You have work to do. So, this whole emphasis. So, I agree with you, Venerable, with that. So, looking at euthanasia or killing a person in some manner and looking at elderly society or disabled society as people who should be supported by us. So, there are two different perspectives. Okay. So, therefore, simply because there is a concept of euthanasia, I don't think we need to really not question the validity of the concept. We can really question the validity of the concept. This is the right thing to do, So what Venerable Velu did is actually asking a question about the validity of the concept. I mean, should we really accept the concept as it is? Is it the right thing to do anyway? No, those are interesting questions, really. Thank you, Venerable.
우리 그 학자님께서 그 안락사에 대한 관심이 있으시다고 하면서 이 안락사라는 단어를 누가 만들고 언제부터 사용하기 시작했느냐라고 안락사의 역사에 대해서 말씀해 주셨고, 또한 늙어서 몸의 여러 가지 기능이 만약에 없어지는 분, 또 편찮으신 분, 이런 분들을 우리가 편안히 평화롭게 지내면서 죽음을 맞이할 수 있도록 자비로운 환경을 우리가 창조해야 할 것 같다. 그런 말씀을 하셨습니다. 그래서 박사가 교수님의 대답은 이 안락사라는 개념은 분명 아시아나 동양 개념에는 없는 그런 개념인데, 지난 세기에 누군가가 만들었는데 정확히 누군가는 모르겠고, 이것이 등장하기 시작한 건 2차 대전 때 나치가 유대인을 인종학살하면서 그것을 주도한 의사들을 많이 전쟁으로 재판하면서 현대의 그런 논의가 시작됐다. 그런데 이 서양에서의 가진 개념은 I own my life, 내 생명을 내가 소유했다, 내가 가지고 있다라는 이러한 그 개념인데, 동양에서는 좀 생소한 개념이죠. 동양에서는 말도 안 되는 개념이라고 잘못된 인상을 가질 수가 있습니다. 또 하나는 I have a right to die, 나에겐 죽을 권리가 있다, 이런 것인데, 이 권리라는 것 자체도 조금 동양에서는 의미를 가지고 볼 수가 있습니다. 우리가 동양의 직관적 철학적 개념을 볼 때, 그러면 내 인생은 오로지 나만 관련된 것인가? 내가 아버지가 죽으면 나머지 가족은 어떻게 됩니까? 승하의 어떤 수백 명이 같이 사는 승가에서 한 사람이 죽으면 수백 명이 어떤 영향을 받지 않을까? 이런 질문을 주시고요. 그래서 또한 마지막으로 뭘 말씀하셨냐면은 안락사를 우리가 이렇게 논의한다고 해서 안락사를 인정하는 것이 아니다. 안락사라는 개념의 타당성에 대해서 의문을 던져볼 필요가 있다. 그것이 바로 우리가 지금 해야 할 일인 것 같다. 그런 말씀을 하셨습니다.
Okay, any other questions or anything else?
다른 질문 있으시죠?
Yes, Venerable.
Good evening, Professor. We talk about euthanasia and masculine. Our mothers face a lot of diseases, a lot of suffering diseases in the best, nearly to die. We have to do surely euthanasia for masculine in civilized European country, but we don't do according to Buddhism. According to Buddhism, we don't do like this. At the time, how should we do for her?
Yeah. Thank you, Venerable. Actually, the euthanasia or this kind of concept, when you look at it, the way it is articulated, it does have a cultural aspect, how different societies approach these things. Now, in the Buddhist societies, we consider elderly people to be respect worthy, so we respect them. But it depends on different societies, now different times. Now you remember my story about Narayama. Now that is a Japanese society, and then also Japanese society was Confucius, Buddhist, and like that. But in that society what happened was, in these villages, food was very scarce, not much food to eat. So they looked at their own life. Interesting thing is, it is not the children who imposed it. It is the elderly people decided what to do with their life. Now there is a difference. like how you should look at your elders, how the elders should look at their life. Now in this story, these elderly people in this village see if they are not useful to their village life, then they are ready to go. Okay. Now, of course, in Sri Lanka or perhaps in Myanmar, your son will never carry you there. But it depends on many factors. Like in this film, as I remember, they had very limited food. Food is very scarce. So in such a situation, you decide how to end your life. But basically, Venerable, your question, I appreciate the question because simply because these things are discussed, this doesn't mean that euthanasia is the solution. No, there are better solutions. If you can look at your parents, look after your parents. If you can look after the disabled people, So those are other more preferable solutions. Yes. Okay. I think you want to say something briefly, or okay, just be brief.
The venerable was saying that his mother was sick, right?
No, I mean any mother,
자, 이게 지금 이스님의 질문은 이것이 유럽이나 다른 데서의 친근한 개념을 알았었는데, 그러면 우리는 만약에 어떤 누군가의 엄마가 굉장히 아프다, 통증을 많이 받고 있다, 그러면 우리는 어떤 식으로 어떻게 했을까, 어떻게 접근을 해야 할 것인가 라고 이제 질문을 했습니다. 그래서 아사카 교수님께서는 사회마다 전부 다른 접근법이 있다고 생각한다. 아까 제가 예를 들은 영화를 드렸는데요. 거기는 유불선이 다른 사회고, 그래서 그런 해법을 가진 것 같고, 만약에 지금 여기 음식이 매우 부족하다. 그런데 나는 별로 사회에 유용한 인간이 아니고 이 다른 사람들 살아야 한다고 생각할 때 자기 행동을 결정할 수 있다. 이런 통역 사례가 있었는데, 나도 그런 점을 지금 늘 가지고 있다. 그런데 어쨌든 이런 부분은 안락사가 가능하다고 생각한다. 이렇게 답을 말씀하셨습니다.
Although time is past, we would like, if you have any visitors have any one question, we can allow if you have any.
시간이 없어서 마지막에 하나의 질문을 받겠습니다.
Okay, that's all. That's okay. If you don't have questions, that's okay. But usually our students have many more questions, but I think they don't want to ask because the visitors are here. So anyway, time is passing. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you very much, Venerables, for participating. So I wind up today's discussion at this point. Thank you very much. Thank you for translation.
서울대 여러분 참석해 주셔서 감사합니다. 그리고 스님 여러분 감사합니다. 네.
Yeah, they have something to offer. So anyway, Venerable, come here. Come.